welcome to Mystic Brew. I am Radagast, and I'm happy to say that we're up to 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to all those subscribers. I waited a few days because my subscription fluctuates quite a bit, and it got up to 1,001. It dropped down to 1,000. Got up to 1,001 again. It actually happened 3 times. Got to 1,001, then dropped back down to 1,000. But 1,000 has held now for a few days, so I'm ready to say yay. Finally got 1,000 subscribers, and I do like saying, we have 1,000 subscribers, because it's just it has to be about we. So my last video, which I put up on a very late Friday night, probably maybe even technically Saturday, that I made with Raksha Moose, and I hope that went over well. I heard from a few people that hadn't commented before, but I also heard from people who were familiar with Raksha. So I was just anybody who wanted to give me any feedback about that, I'm interested. I thought it was a really good conversation, allowing us both to talk about something that's dear to us, which is community and community building specifically, and the different approaches we take, and the ability to kind of connect on that noospheric kind of the communication musicians get into when they get into a groove together. And I really thought it enabled me, because I'm very passionate about community, but I can tend to look at it a little bit like materials coming in. I be a little clinical about my assessment. And Raksha wades, he in his shamanic, his shaman's performance within the community, that he carries a lot, and he processes it in a completely different way. It's my way's a little drier, his way's a lot moister, and I often find when people kind of on the same wavelength, coming from the exact same thing, same topic, but from the unique perspectives, and how we seem to feed off of each other. My idea would stimulate him, his idea would stimulate me. And so I just really hope that the chemistry seemed to be good on camera, because it was really good to experience. Okay, so I have been in a very mystical mode. A lot of my day is spent slipping in and out of that those half trances, those places where, when you're thinking, you get assistance, you get insertions. You have to grab a pad and write as quick as you can. During one of Raksha's shows last week, I guess we just did one Sunday, right? So it would have been last Thursday, the night before we did the show together. And while he was talking, I was getting all kinds of wild notes. But the one jot that came out, that I think I can read out of context, because this was coming like in kind of energetic ejaculations, and it would come in and then after I would get it out, then it was just amazing. And a lot of it was also sometimes riffing off some of the things Raksha was saying, but I kind of just went into this altered state, and I was getting hammered. What was cool and just kind of came to me, there was about how the Norse knew where their heaven was. And of course, this was kind of coming in information, from the Sophianic narrative. I call it a perennial wisdom, kind of a deep Gnostic perspective. And so I was kind of I was getting all kinds of stuff about Earth, and and the Anunnaki was all coming through, and then all of a sudden it was just about the sense of placement, the sense of culture and who you are and connection to the universe when you actually kind of have a map. And based on the world tree Yggdrasil, which I guess was a giant ash tree or something, but they use that as their map. Now, one say, "Oh, it's, the idea of a tree." Again, you have to realize this is a mapping, and tree was that mapping. And it's really funny, even now, as I'm getting into this, I'm thinking about, I went outside to have a pre-show cigarette and to get my bare feet on the ground and connect to Mother. Had an experience with, it was funny, I've been staring at a light, so when I looked into the darkness, there's that kind of like still that shadow from that, so when I turned into the darkness, I could see these first three, then it was two pieces, and it was going, oh, I can't try and go for second sight here until that clears out. And then a voice in my head said, no, work with those artifacts. And no sooner did I look at them than they morphed into this beautiful deep indigo and then into a purple and disappeared. And then I kind of was like looking for the original, but when I disallowed my vision to soften, the two really rich purples showed up for another fleeting second, didn't do any morphing this time, and then went away. So, and then during that experience, for some reason, I've studied traditional Chinese medicine, and I'm a shiatsu practitioner. So knowing how the elements flow in the body is part of your health plan, part of your health concept, how you help people. And knowing what the organs stand for and things, and how in the classical elements are air, fire, water, earth, okay, and then the kind of the Hermeticists knew there was an ether. And ether is I know that could be a long talk, but it involves the medium that everything is. You look out in the Hubble telescope and you see all these kind of galaxies sitting out there, almost like kind of fish riding ocean currents. Well, there is an etheric medium, which a lot of it is kind of, if you could look at it electrically and magnetically, you'd see it's a lot of different plasma currents are involved also. We're just kind of reducing down to plasma. What's inside a cell? It's protoplasm. If you take all the stuff out of our blood, you're left with plasma. Basically, blood is this very clear fluid, which is just a medium that supports everything that goes into blood, that makes it the colors it is and what it carries. But again, we're always coming back to this kind of this primordial medium, the medium that kind of transitions between different states from physical to the non-physical. And for some reason I got onto the fact that in the Chinese system they have an element wood, and how in my coming from a Western system I saw wood as ether. So I'm out on the grass, still having my cigarette. The orbs have gone away. And I just get this thing of how from the earth, now again, the earth from my perspective is, where the divine intelligence from the center of the galaxy resides with us, as Gaia Sophia. And I also don't accept normal, I'm not alone. I don't know whether it's part of the Thunderbolts project, but I do know I've heard Cliff High talk about it, and rather than a molten iron core, I believe we have a plasma core. I believe that plasma core is part of her plasmic arrival. And that also ties into things like expanding Earth, but that'll get lost. This is kind of more philosophical, not scientific. And so I just got this whole thing of like how what hidden within the earth is the ether at its heart, and how the reason why wood was picked to kind of be symbolic of this intelligence is because, unlike water or air, fire, and earth, wood is responsive. You know, trees, plants, whatever, you know, like that the green part of nature responds to nature, to sun, to water. It gets sick, it loses limbs. There is so much of a commonality with this kind of spirit ether, not just the fire, not like that, not all that woof, this much more refined essence. And how, just like the trees, we humans embody that kind of plasma essence. So anyway, that was stepping outside for a cigarette with my feet on the ground, and it actually felt like the information was coming up through my feet. And then even in Chinese medicine, they have different nicknames for different organs, but wood is the gallbladder and the meridian, as far as, you know, in the Chinese system. Like, you know, fire governs the heart and pericardium, plus also the small intestine, and also the triple warmer. But I don't want to bore you with that. So the wood is the element for the gallbladder meridian. And what are the gallbladder meridian called? They're called the general and the lieutenant. And in other words, like kind of like the responsive intelligence of the kind of biological body. The Na is kind of governed by the liver, and that's a big part of Chinese medicine. And I mean, just to see, you know, thinking of the intelligence of plasma, how it's embodied in wood, how they call the liver the general. I mean, just all these tie-ins with intelligence. Anyway, that's what happens if I go out for a cigarette barefoot, especially after seeing orbs. So, but the so how did I get off on that? Because of the tree that the Norse arranged their worlds on, and so you have this tree, which in many ways is another symbol of something living, intelligent, the plasmic energy arising from where? The earth. And of course, getting the support from the water and the air and everything else. I mean, nothing is apart, but there's just certain places where there's greater agency for a certain focus. So we have Yggdrasil. So anyway, we had Midgard, which is Earth, and if anybody's leaning towards flat Earth, I think Midgard was kind of put as a kind of a flat. Well, all the realms were kind of placed on convex kind of flat things in their imagery. Again, this is tracking. And they had Elfheim and Jotunheim, and they had a couple of other heims, the homes of like in this case the giants and the elves. Jotunheim would be giants and Elfheim would be the elves. But they also had like this bridge off to where Asgard was, and that was their heaven. And how, when you think, like, especially from people who do like shamanic work, and very often in some of the I guess more America's based, at least as we've heard, there's kind of the underworld and there's the upper world. They're kind of two different places where you can contact spirits. But and of course there was an underworld on the World Tree too. But I mean, just how they had these different trackings, but they had heaven located, and how that must be kind of cool. To be on this planet and have these various trackings, and quite obviously they were quite attached to Mother Earth too. And then how the Gnostics have again what's called the Gnostics would come from the mystery schools, and from the most primordial understandings of our first shamans about Mother Earth, and then like apparently it developed and about her, that we all have our origin, our consciousness origin in the center of the galaxy, the pleroma, or the fullness, the galactic central, the central sun, and And so basically they all knew what their spirits had this home in the Pleroma, but we had an aspect of the Pleroma with us, and that this is where we're acting. In the later parts of the Gnostics, when you start getting into the Christian stuff, and the world was starting to turn into the mess, the process of getting to the mess we are today was starting to get into full swing. There was quite a bit of I get a lot of trauma in the writings of the Nag Hammadi texts, traumatized people. So what am I up to here? I'm up to 15 minutes. So I think it's powerful psychologically, and I kind of, the word, if I were to say, and it also connects us magically. And one of the other things that has happened since the world has turned for the worse is the bad name magic in general got. Some form of magical thinking, interaction, or whatever was part of daily life for most of the life on this planet. Magic is how we work with nature and how we deal with the divine, sometimes in more intimate levels, and it takes many different forms. And this isn't the stupidity of making love charms and pinning dots, all that nasty stuff. That's abuse of that beautiful energy. Of course, it's a neutral energy. It's given from it, that energy is given in love, and then we can choose what to do with it. And but there's been a whole break from the magical way we lived, and part of that magical living was the reverence for nature, the appreciation for that nature still had the magic that was disappearing from our world. And just the fact that most organized religions, or at least some of the ones we're probably more familiar with, magic was forbidden. If there's going to be any magic getting done, it would be by the ordained, by the priesthood, whatever they call themselves. They're still a priesthood. And if there was going to be any magic, it would be them. And in fact, there are certainly stories of certain monks or bishops or whatever going into the hinterlands of the pagans and meeting their shaman and producing more powerful magic. And whether or not those are true from a psychological point of view, let me tell you something. If you go into a small village, who and are being taken care of by a shaman, and he's basically saying, don't listen to this person, and then those two decide to have some kind of magical contest, and the other side wins, that makes his magic look weak. And so then, even whether they think this person with the more powerful magic is good or bad, whoever he is, he's connected to a more powerful magic, and you want to be on the right side of that magic. So it's just kind of interesting how apparently some of the monks came from these, so they knew how it worked, but they got a new gig, came with a pension, so we can forget the old ways. So do I want to, so anyway, so I got really, that was the most fun thing I got when things were coming through, was that whole thing of the Norse knew where their heaven was. Oh yeah, and what I write, the shamans had access. The mythos had drama for teaching. In many ways, those gods, because sometimes seem a little oafish or prone to mistake. So in many ways, the drama of the gods could be a way for people to look at their own behavior. Now, of course, a lesser person might go, "Hey, I'm not behaving any worse than them." But I think the wise knew that, again, these were dramas, and they also, in certain cases, were talking about elemental energies woven into dramas. but that the wise would quickly or ultimately surpass the gods in ethics and morality, again, as they're portrayed in their dramas. And then where those quote unquote gods, where they could fall back to their primordial elemental ways. And that would be like the people who had kind of grown up in that system and then realize what these dramas were about, what their psychological import was to people watching the drama to possibly learn about ethics and morals. And then once one saw past that more elementary teaching and saw these as more elemental forces, and that in fact a wise man who decided to conduct himself well could probably conduct himself with a lot more dignity and oopsies than the Norse pantheon did. So something, I think that's probably going to be it. I knew the days were ticking by. I have so much material, and it's where to go. But I'm going to work some Anunnaki into it. I really want to tell a Sophianic narrative. I really want to connect people to Earth and back to their original sovereignty and their magic. Because whatever system you're working for, you're getting your juice from somewhere. And in certain systems, it's funny how some systems will use you. And that's most magical. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of Gordon White, and he talks to all these people in their magical systems, and they have it. I mean, it's really clear listening to them. Boy, they got a pretty clean. They've been there. But boy, they bring a bunch. Some of them better than others, but they bring. I don't know. It's almost like a Harry Potter aspect to it, and which isn't based in natural magic. It isn't based in our human magic. It's based on the other system that got laid in here, and sure, it works for hell. Of course, it works. It was set up to work. All I can say is, a lot of these magics, you have to do something to protect yourself. That's all you need to know, in my opinion. But a lot of people are quite daring, and I do admire their bravado, because they're ready to go out there and stand their own with a lot of these energies, and that's beautifully human. It's really and yeah. What we could really do is a lot of great work together if we got it, and it'd be it would be very magical, very empowering. Okay, so this will be one of my shorter ones. I really enjoyed talking with Moose. I hope people enjoyed listening to it. Thank you to the subscribers for bringing us up to 1,000, and it was a slow climb, but I'm not chasing subscribers. I'm trying to reach people with thoughtful content, and that'll be it for now. So I'll see you next time.